Hello, my dear viewers. This amazing story will be very instructive for you. It is very interesting and beautiful. I wish you enjoy watching it.
Girls, the chimes are about to strike. Let's hurry up and get to the table. May uttered this cry loud enough to attract the attention of her friends, but no one heard her. She looked toward the ajar balcony door, where the festive glow of the capital was coming from. Gwen and Lily were watching this mesmerizing picture from the ninth floor. May repeated her appeal louder, and the girls shouted in one voice, "Come." The owner of a luxurious apartment in an elite residential complex was used to having all her wishes fulfilled instantly, but her friends were showing clear disobedience, so she, displeased, shrugged her shoulders as if trying to throw off something unpleasant and disgusting. Acting like teenage girls and yet trying to portray themselves as well. The best part of our society. May was accustomed from her childhood to classify herself as an elite. Much of the formation of this worldview contributed to the education, because the girl's father was quite rich. The hostess impatiently tapped the glass with her finger, and the friends noisily poured into the spacious room, where everything sparkled and sparkled. The space of the richly furnished living room was filled with the expectation of a miracle. But most of all, the celebration was in the eyes of the young women. May, at least on New Year's Eve, don't be such a nerd. We have to sing until we drop to have fun tonight. Lily laughed and added, "Gwen, you've put it wrong. We're going to drink and have fun." May smiled indulgently. "I won't let you drink till you drop, because a real lady shouldn't lose her human form." Lily hugged her friend by the shoulders and began to shake her. "Speak, and you will allow us to have fun. We want to have a good time today. In some centuries gathered together, and you put restrictions on us. It's unfair and even cruel. We have to go to the Christmas tree on this magical night, where people go out." May closed the balcony door. She looked at the joyful faces of her friends. A different emotion raged in her new heart. She smiled again. "Why do we have to go to the Christmas tree when we can sit here and talk? I can't stand these crowds full of drunken, screaming women." Gwen ignored her hostess's remarks. She looked at the huge panel, which was a stylized version of a chronometer. "While you're arguing here, time is running out." A certain me, as if on cue, simultaneously looked at the clock. Unknown author of the design miracle decided to make the dial of the sun, which is a huge ball spread over a green valley with a river, toy houses. This picture of summer idyll attracted the eye, and now the three women were in the power of the illusion created by the artist. It became so quiet that the movement of the hands was clearly audible. 1. Gwen came to her senses. "Only a minute left. Open the champagne. May, have you prepared pencils and napkins?" "Why?" The hostess gave the table a check-up look. Lily had already grabbed the empty bottle of fizzy drink. "What a stupid question. We'll make a wish. Did you forget?" "That's right, girls. It's gonna be a good one." May rushed to the elegant mahogany hero, and in a second on the table appeared 3 napkin pens in front of you. "You can make your wishes." The first strikes of the chimes burst into the room. Gwen and Lily squealed and began scribbling hastily on the naughty napkins. May watched her friends with an indulgent smile. Lily was the first to complete the task. She lightly uncorked the bottle and filled the glasses. On the 12th stroke, the 3 women sipped their glasses. "You have to dry to the bottom or the wish won't come true." Gwen displayed the empty flute. May gave her friend a cold stare. "It's all nonsense, child's play. One idiot invented this ritual, and others repeat it, stupid and dumb." Lily gently pushed the empty glass away from her. "May, today is such a wonderful holiday. I want to be happy and cheerful. You can't go around with a sour face and lecture everyone. You don't like the custom, no one's forcing you to do it. But Gwen and I love it. You're the one who's always saying you should respect other people's opinions. Or did you just mean your own opinion?" May realized that she had said too much and tried to correct her mistake. "That you're paying attention to my grumbling. You know I can be a bore sometimes. Why don't you tell me the secret of what you've been up to?" Gwen made scary eyes. "You can't tell secrets, or the wish won't come true." Lily filled the glasses again. "I'll tell you. We all understand perfectly well that it's just a beautiful element of the game, but it's still nice to live with hope. For years now, I've written just 2 words on a napkin. I want to get married, but up there, where they register our wish, I'm always put at the back of the line. A year goes by, and my application remains unprocessed. The girl looked at the chandelier and wagged her finger as if the crystal lamp was to blame for her unsettled love life. May looked at her friend with interest. That's an interesting interpretation. By the way, it explains why I refuse to indulge in such amusements. Gwen was actively wielding her fork, but it didn't prevent her from inserting her meaningful word at the right moment. Tasty salad you got yourself cooked, or? May interrupted her friend. I made everything on this table myself. I really wanted to get your approval. Gwen hummed. Good for you. And speaking of boys, May, why did you suddenly decide to revive our girlish traditions? If my memory serves me correctly, you have at your personal disposal not only this luxurious apartment, but also a famous husband, even more famous, and a whole box of other privileges. Did you leave them alone for the sake of meeting old friends on such a holiday? This question took the woman by surprise. She began to twirl the champagne-filled glass in her hands. It was spontaneous. You know, sometimes everything in life changes in an instant. Yeah, like New Year's Eve was one thing, and then the chimes did their thing. Bang, bang, and everything changed. May nodded her head. That's about right, Gwen. The boundary between present and past lives seems invisible, but it's impossible to cross that line. Lily looked at her friend sympathetically. Why this verbal equilibrium? Tell me honestly, your hockey player cheated on you. Found another? May struggled to find the words. No, there's another reason. You know, guys, it's complicated. Joe's retired from big sports, he's sick, and I'm not ready for this kind of challenge. I tried, but it just doesn't work. May tried to sound convincing, but there was indifference in her voice. The fork slipped out of Gwen's hands and fell noisily onto the plate. What do you mean it's not ready? May had already recovered from her momentary confusion. It's very simple. When I got married, I didn't think that I would have to take my husband to the bathroom, wash him, and make his bed. I'm sorry for the details, but you asked for it. Did you think your whole life was going to be made up of pleasantries? May smirked. You'd think otherwise. It is the duty of any decent man to provide for his woman. For the sake of fairness, I should point out, Joe had been up to the task for over 7 years. But now, in addition to his health problems, he was having financial difficulties. And you were scared? Yes, I was scared. What's wrong with that? I'm a normal woman, not a nurse. I need a healthy man. Lily resolutely got up from the table. Another ruined New Year's Eve. Come on, Gwen. Let's go under the tree and then we'll crash at my place. We're not used to truffles and lobster, but we'll have a decent appetizer too. Gwenya followed her friend. Thank you, May. But we really should go. We're not the right company for you. The friends hurried to leave May's apartment, who saw them off with an angry look. But you hypocrites are miserable. They pretend to be paragons of virtue, but they'd sell themselves for an extra 100. They could hear the elevator going up before they got in, Lily, May said disappointedly. You're used to measuring everyone by your own yardstick, but there are other values in life besides money. Goodbye. The automatic doors closed almost silently, and May remained standing on the landing. It was a holiday outside, and she was in mourning. The clock read 2:15. God, what a bad start to the year. And why did I invite those idiots over? I'll make it up to them. May frantically searched her phone for the right number. Harry, Happy New Year. Don't you miss me? Oh, that's good to hear. Okay, I'll be your snow maiden for the night. Wait for me. May had long noticed that Joe's ex-boyfriend had a thing for her. Once the men played together, but Harry was lucky enough to draw the lucky lot, so he was frankly jealous of his friend's success. The former friend was even ready to mess with Joe, but not everyone had a lucky draw. Now he hinted at this circumstance, to which May replied, Harry, I promise to give you a chance you've been waiting for a long time. I hope you know what I'm talking about. The man's satisfied chuckle was heard in the receiver and whispered, I'm really looking forward to you. The mood immediately lifted to the right level. May most appreciated those who openly admired her. She examined her reflection in the mirror, corrected the tightly fitting dress that was perfect for her figure. And why not? How long can one abide by the nun's code? I am a lively and very beautiful woman. I need to shake off the stress too. And Harry is a very nice man and deserves a woman's warmth. May slipped her mink coat over her shoulders and headed for the elevator. Henry couldn't get used to the deafening silence that had settled in his huge house for months. When the successful businessman had built the mansion, he dreamed that his wife would have at least 3 kids who would later give them grandchildren. But Callie cringed at the prospect of being the mom of many children. She had told her husband many times, "Henry, come down to earth. Look around you. We need to get Joe back on his feet." It was indeed a turbulent time back then. "Callie, these things are temporary. Trust me, it'll only take a few years for things to get back to normal. I know what I'm talking about, and I know I can provide for my family." But the woman wouldn't give up. "Henry, you don't have my best interests at heart. I've got a dissertation coming up, and I'm not going to stop there. So maternity leave is not in my plans." Kelly moved step by step towards her main goal. But on this path, the family for her was a secondary factor. So Joe was practically from birth in the care of nannies and governesses. When the boy grew up, the family moved into a new apartment almost in the heart of the capital. By that time, social groups had already been clearly formed in the country, and Henry was sincerely glad that he was on the top step of this ladder. But he did not boast of his high position. On the contrary, he liked to spend his time in good male company. His wife often hinted to him that a man of this status should choose his friends more responsibly. To these remarks he always replied, "I have never been a snob and I am not going to become one. One must always remain a human being." One thing surprises me, how quickly some of our society has changed. Anyone in particular? At least you, for all I know, you've never been an earl, and you act as if you had blue blood in your veins. Callie was angry at such reasoning, but she did not want to be like her husband and kept silent. Perhaps it was the lack of understanding that caused the couple to drift further apart every day. But if the parents did not want or did not want to admit it, Joe painfully perceived the split in the family. Many times the teenager tried to reason with his parents, but they did not hear him. Therefore, the departure of Callie abroad was the expected finale of many years of confrontation. It happened right on Christmas Eve. Callie was so much agitated that she embarrassed Henry. "Callie, if I didn't know better, I'd think you were on some kind of medication. What is it about you that makes you so excited, so energized?" The woman hugged and kissed her husband in front of her son, though she'd never allowed herself such liberties in front of a child before. "Henry, I'm really bursting with joy. I've waited all these years for this day, and now it's here. I wanted to keep it a secret, but now that you've brought it up, I'll confess it." The woman paused, and Henry felt his heart racing. Despite his excitement, he tried to turn it into a joke, because he could see how anxiously his son was watching them. "Don't tell me you decided to rob a bank or a jewelry store on New Year's Eve." The woman wrinkled her nose. "Well, as usual, you've ruined everything with your flat jokes," Joe intervened. "Mom, Dad didn't say anything offensive. You just take humor wrong." Callie Semyonovna tapped her knuckles on the tabletop, as if she were not close people but students. "I see that you're conspiring. Well, maybe it's for the best. You two will make a good couple while I'm away." Joe froze, and Henry asked sharply, "Where do you think you're going, Callie?" "Don't be silly, Henry. I got a lucky ticket, and I don't want to miss my chance. As part of a partnership with the European education community, I'm going to Austria for an internship. Couldn't you have at least given us a heads up before?" "Henry, why? We've been living our own lives for a long time. You and Joe won't even notice I'm gone. Besides, our son's a man on his own and he doesn't need a nanny." Henry couldn't resist taking a jab at his wife. "It's funny to hear you say that, because you've never burdened yourself with unnecessary worries. For you, science has always been more important than family." Women philosophically noted, "Sometimes you have to sacrifice the most expensive. But what can you do? That's life. You should be happy for me, but you're sour. Well, it won't be long, because it's only a 2-year internship." Henry saw his wife off with his son. He remembers the day well. The New Year holidays had not yet had time to make noise, so the Christmas tree was in the center of the airport building. Passengers arriving from the holidays were eager to have their pictures taken with a synthetic Santa Claus in their arms. Callie kept looking at her watch, and it was obvious that she was burning with impatience. Sooner they would leave the country. That's why the goodbye turned out crumpled and cold. For a few seconds, the woman leaned on the shoulder of her visibly grown-up son. "Son, take care of your daddy and be sure to come in the summer. I'll get you a visa." Henry's memory was preserved by his wife's smile. Then the man thought, this is the smile of people who have gotten rid of something they don't need. At that moment, he realized that his wife was leaving his life forever, but he said nothing to his son about his hunches. Not even a year later, the man received a notice in the mail that his wife had filed for dissolution of marriage. He felt humiliated and insulted. Trying to control his emotions, Henry dialed his wife's number. Kelly Semyonovna called every week to check on her son's affairs. She was no longer interested in her husband's affairs. The businessman never called her first, so the woman on the other side of Europe was surprised. "Henry, is something wrong? Do you have the conscience to ask?" "Don't yell at me. Just tell me what happened." "No, you explain to me what the message I got means." "I didn't think you'd get it so quickly." "Well, guess what? I did. You could have told me, at least called me." "Henry, you do realize that calls are very expensive." The man interrupted his wife with irritation. "Kelly, you're not very handy. You've got an excuse. Are you so strapped for cash that you can't call your husband? Have I offended you so much that you don't think it's worth discussing this matter over the phone? I didn't realize you'd fallen to that level, but that's your business. And you don't have to worry about the divorce. I have already instructed my lawyer, and he will prepare all the papers." There was silence on the other end, but Henry could sense, even from a distance, what thoughts were running through his wife's mind to prolong her agony. He remained silent and won this fight. A deep sigh was heard as Kelly took a deep breath. "Henry, you speak so calmly about this. Why don't you ask me why I decided to take this step?" "I'll tell you honestly, I don't care. We haven't had a family for a long time, so I'm absolutely not interested in your personal life." "Really? Did you think I'd cry and beg you? But we have a son. Remember, Joe's about to be 16 and he's entitled to decide his own destiny. But you can talk to him about moving in with me. I wouldn't dream of it. Let him decide who he wants to stay with." Joe chose his father, but all the years he lived with a heavy burden on his soul and could not understand why his mother was so cruel to him. After all, shortly after that landmark conversation with her husband, the woman called her son and said that she was marrying his Austrian colleague. But Joe didn't even listen to his mother and hung up. It wasn't until months later that Henry found out about that phone call. By unspoken agreement from then on, that son and father never mentioned his mother. Henry sat in front of the fireplace, and the peaceful crackling of the fire induced sleep. The long New Year's vacation was, on the one hand, a pleasant addition to the extreme conditions of life, but on the other hand, it was very discouraging. In the near future, a whole pile of accumulated problems in the company was to be solved. But most importantly, the man's concern was his son. He felt guilty for what had happened to him. After all, in movies and television, reports do not tell what professional athletes pay the price. Yes, there is a downside to everything. There is a price to pay for everything. Henry spoke aloud the thought that had been bothering him the most lately. He turned the wood in the fireplace and decided to check on his son. But no sooner had the man taken a few steps than he heard a noise. The drowsiness lifted like a hand. Henry rushed almost at a run to the opposite side of the building where his son's room was. "Joe, what's wrong?" The loud sounds, like the banging of a heavy object, came again. Then Sarah shouted, "Gina, Felix, where have you all gone?" Henry felt a chill go through him. His imagination immediately began to paint the most horrible pictures. He ran into his son's room and almost fell down, bumping into a powerful obstacle in the form of Sarah. The woman had worked in the businessman's home for almost 15 years. She did the bookkeeping and supervised the staff. Thanks to her skillful work, the owner and his son were surrounded by the comforts of home. "Henry, you almost knocked me over. I can't get a hold of those freeloaders. I'd advise you to look for other guards." All this advice Sarah was giving out in the middle of the day. She was trying to lift Joe. The young man was lying on the floor. He was pale, but from his rapid breathing, his father realized that he was alive. The man rushed to the son. "Joe, what's wrong? Wake up." Sarah reassured the owner. "Do not worry, now he will wake up. I didn't realize what happened when I heard the crash. I guess Joe decided to walk on his own. but he didn't realize his strength and fell. Sarah gestured at the crutches. Should we call an ambulance? Joe objected. No ambulance. The sight of white coats already gives me the creeps. The woman wheeled a wheelchair over to where the young man had fallen, and Henry helped him up. Joe, why are you doing this? The doctor told you. Pa, I don't know who to listen to anymore. Some doctors say that every movement is bad for me, and others, on the contrary, advise me to be more active. And I myself, I can't accept my helplessness. I don't need you to comfort me. Henry raised his voice so that Sarah flinched. Stop being hysterical and be a man. Yes, disaster has happened to you, but that doesn't mean life is over. Joe looked at his father in surprise as he continued. I'll tell you without doctors that you can't get discouraged. You have to believe in yourself. How many examples are there when doctors made not a comforting prognosis and a person, against all odds, got back on his feet? Dad, those cases are rare. I could take after this truly courageous man, but I have a very different diagnosis. I know you have multiple sclerosis, but people with this disease live, work, and even have children. Joe laughed hysterically. Dad, you want to hurt me on purpose. You know very well that we broke up with May, or to be more precise, she left me. So what? She's not the end of the world? Let her go. Loud footsteps were heard in the corridor. Sarah commented. They're running. 2 young men, identical from the face. One of the guards said in an apologetic tone, My colleague and I just stepped out for a moment. Henry gave the stocky man a stern look from head to toe. You'll have a lot of free time now. You're fired. And so is your buddy. You can tell him. I need reliable help, not slackers. Goodbye. The guard just stood in the doorway. Joe decided to stick up for the boys. Dad, the boys had nothing to do with it. I had them escorted out so they wouldn't have to watch my every move. In fact, I don't understand why I need such an escort if I can't leave the house. The contract was for these lazy bums to make sure you got out and about in the city. And I mistakenly thought that you would be comfortable in the company of young and sturdy guys. Sarah shook her head. Joe didn't need the company of jocks, but a good caregiver. The businessman looked at his assistant with interest. Perhaps you're right. And how did I not think of that before? Joe tried to get to his feet, but he failed. He slapped his hand on the arm of the chair with irritation. The thing that annoys me the most is that everyone's so excited about the details of my life, but I'm not asked. I don't need a nurse. I feel like I'm terminally ill right now, and you're trying to convince me, Dad, that I have a future. Joe forcefully turned his vehicle around. Okay, show's over. I need to be alone. All the visitors, including Henry himself, hurry out of Joe's room. Left alone with his thoughts, the young man began to beat his fists on the armrest. Why? Why am I being punished for this? Henry, despite his constant workload, had always tried to maintain a healthy lifestyle. It was something he taught his son from childhood. Since Kaylee had no time to raise Joe, he decided to do it himself. The boy attended gymnasium, and the physical education teacher immediately appreciated the good physical shape of the kid. Your son's reactions are excellent, and his coordination is good. I'd advise you, Henry, to take the boy to the coach of the children's team. We have a big gap in hockey today, so we need talented kids. The teacher himself called his buddy who coached the kids' team, and he set up an appointment. The boy immediately liked everything, and the uniform, and the real hockey stick, and the guys. While his father talked to the coach, he had time to get acquainted with everyone. Then Joe excitedly told his father, Dad, you have no idea that these boys have been practicing for 2 whole years. They even went to the big puck tournament and won. Do you want to be on their team? You're asking me. I just used to think that for hockey you have to grow up first. It seems to me, too, that I'm still too young for such a sport. If Mom finds out, she'll be shocked, because hockey is not a safe sport. Joe grabbed his father's hand and looked at him pleadingly. Dad, we won't tell Mom yet, we'll keep it a secret. And then when they get their medal, we'll tell her everything, and she won't be mad. Henry knew he didn't have to go along with that suggestion. Son, you know it's wrong to lie, right? Dad, we're not gonna lie, we're just not gonna tell Mom. She doesn't know we went to the gym. Yeah, son. I don't think she's interested right now. Our mom's got a defense coming up. So Callie was left in the dark for a long time about what Joe did in his spare time. Twice a week, the businessman took his little boy to the gym. After training, the boy was overflowing with emotion. "My coach praised me today, said that I will make a great striker. Congratulations, but you realize that in any business you need perseverance." "Yes, Dad, the coach told us that hard work and only hard work can make a master out of a slacker." The man laughed heartily. "Good for your coach. Do you even know what the word slacker means?" "Our teacher calls us that all the time," he says. "Reward me with a whole class of slackers." Joe humorously parodied his class teacher, and Henry couldn't help laughing. One day after practice, the son declared, "Now I have a real friend. His name is Harry. Too bad he's at a different school." How could that get in the way of a real friendship? The boy shrugged his shoulders. "I don't know. But Harry said I'm lucky because I go to grammar school, and he has to go to a normal school because his dad works in a factory." What a silly thing to say. Remember, son, that it's not the place that beautifies a person, but on the contrary, a person decorates the place of work or service with his work. Take you, for example. If you persistently train, you'll get into the junior team. And then you will play in adult hockey. You will play at championships. That's great. That's great. Mom and I will be proud of your achievements. The boy sighed. When it will have to wait so long. By the way, your Harry can have a dizzying career too, if he tries hard enough. Joe perked up. Great. I'll be sure to tell him at the next training session, because he gets nervous when things don't work out. But if Joe gave everything easy, Harry would squeak to overcome the difficulties of big sports. He diligently imitated his friend in everything, but it did not help him to reach the high bar, which has already overcome Joe. Coach felt sorry for the boy and encouraged him in everything. One day, the top brass showed up at practice. "But come on, coach, brag about your achievements." The coach arranged a demonstration tournament for the guests and friends, specially identified in different teams. This trick was hidden in the coach's plan, to show his Diamond E. Joe to the knowledgeable people. The guests watched the match with passion and cheered for Joe's team. "Coach, that boy is a real talent. How old is he?" 14. A little early for the junior varsity. Rules are there to be broken, and sometimes you can and should make exceptions for a kid's height. He's got the physique of a 16-year-old. They're all growing like broilers these days. That's good. Can I talk to your pupil? Sure, yeah. And that player number 11, I would put him in defense or even remove him from the field. He's a little weak, he fusses a lot, but he plays quite well for amateur hockey. Harry hadn't heard what they were saying about his abilities, but he noticed that the chief guest had taken Joe out of the locker room with him. Envy had long ago settled in the teenager's soul, but he hid it skillfully, and this time he couldn't help it. That's it, it's gone. Now Joe would get his nose in the air. Nick looked at the boy contemptuously. Joe deserved it. He's a great striker. You should be happy for your friend, Harry, but you're making jokes. What are you jealous of? Mind you, it's an incurable disease and it always ends badly. Soon Joe's life changed dramatically. He was named to the junior varsity squad, despite his age. He also had to change his grammar school to a school for rising athletes. As the training schedule became tighter, the family had to move to the capital. Henry was proud of his son, but his father's life was overshadowed by the fact that he almost never saw him. However, still once he managed to carve out time to attend a training session. The man was very surprised when he recognized Harry among the players of the team. In the evening, he asked his son, "I see that your friend is not lagging behind you." Joe was somehow embarrassed by this remark. Sort of. Harry is trying, so the coach decided to keep him as a substitute, but they don't take him to serious tournaments. Doesn't he take offense at this selective treatment? Joe looked at his father strangely again. In big sports, there is no place for resentment and relationship troubles. Here you have to defend the honor of the team. Is that what your coach says? The boy laughed. My dad's a different coach now, but he's not a man to be trifled with. He always has some jokes and quips on his tongue. Coach often visits us, is very worried about us, says that we are his own children. It is good when you meet such people as your coach. Our new coach is a nice guy too, but Harry's not crazy about him. What's your friend's problem with the new coach? Dad, is pretty clear. The old coach felt sorry for Harry and the new coach is running him around like a dog. Of course, Harry doesn't like that, and he's mad at everybody. There's nothing you can do about it. You said yourself that in sports the strongest wins. Why do you call your coach such a frivolous name? He wanted it that way. I am the youngest in the team, and all the guys are older than me. Many of them are studying in institutes. By the way, the coach himself is also a student. He is only 28. He switched to coaching after the injury, but he cannot accept it. But to bring up future champions, it is also an honorable job for a laugh. But this time his laughter was light, which said that the guy is also happy at heart. Dad, you're having an interesting conversation today, as if you've learned the headlines from the newspapers in advance. I'm sorry, son. Our generation was brought up on other ideals, and we once sincerely believed in an apple tree on Mars, and in communism on the whole planet, and in many other things. Joe often hinted at his father's different perceptions of the world around him, but Henry never took offense at such remarks. He was pleased that his son was trying to understand him, not ridicule old-fashioned attitudes. In turn, the businessman also always listened attentively to the boy, which helped him to look at the world through his son's eyes. Probably, this is what became a solid foundation for their real friendship. Joe had no secrets from his father, and Henry tried to reciprocate. But still, a huge black cat ran between them one day, and its shadow remained for the rest of their lives. And the culprit was the same Harry. Success in sports did not pass for Joe without a trace. He was invited to various TV programs, interviewed. Numerous female fans from different parts of the country sent him fiery letters. The popularity of this friend frankly envied Harry. Joe, you should be casting so many good-looking girls around you. You think I like that? But you gotta respect the groupies. That's not what I'd do if I were you. I wonder if you could give me some advice. I'd have some kind of tricky contest for them, and the one who wins would be honored to spend the evening or night with me. Joe looked at his comrade. Harry, I hope you're joking. No, I'm dead serious. Think of the life you could have. A new chick every day, adult paychecks, honors everywhere, camera flashes. Are you jealous of me? We're friends, Harry. I always thought you'd be happy for me, but you're just holding a pebble in your pocket like this. I didn't expect that. Harry tried to play it off, but Joe realized that he'd been doing the masterful job of being a friend all these years. After that incident, he avoided Harry's company, which only made him angrier. His teammates also began to notice the split, but it was not customary to discuss such delicate topics in new circles. The situation resolved itself. One of the fans of the young hockey player was particularly persistent, and inexperienced Joe could not resist her fanatical devotion. The girl named Ilona studied at one of the capital's universities and already considered herself the bride of a famous athlete. Although Joe liked her, but still he did not dare to introduce his father to his beloved. It is not known how the further fate of the guy would have developed, if not for the intervention of Harry. Failures in the sports field a little cooled down the ambitious young man, and he decided to try his hand at business. And in this direction, Harry did much better. Although former friends crossed rarely, he knew about the recent changes in Joe's life. And one day fate gave the envious man a chance to avenge his past humiliations. Harry, through acquaintances, got a job in a reputable firm, but he did not know that the owner of the enterprises is Joe's father. When the guy sent to the main office with a report, he quite by accident ran into Henry in the doorway, who was in a hurry somewhere. Surprisingly, the businessman recognized him at once. Harry, what are you doing here? Hello, Henry. I'm working here. I just got a new job. What about sports? I'm a realist, so I chose something I'm good at. You did the right thing. Okay, I'm in a hurry. We'll talk more when we get a chance. Harry decided to strike while the iron was still in the shop. There'd be a chance soon, because Joe was getting married. This news stunned the businessman, and he dropped the folder with papers out of surprise. The papers flew in different directions, and Harry obligingly rushed to pick them up. Henry thanked the boy for his help. I really don't have time right now, but I'll be free in 2 hours. I'll be waiting for you. But I've got work to do, discipline first. I'll take care of it. I'll see you in 2 hours. Harry's soul rejoiced. He realized that Henry was not aware of his son's affairs of the heart and would probably not approve of his choice. The young schemer was a pretty good judge of character. Indeed, Joe's father was surprised, to say the least, by the details of his son's private life. In the evening of the same day, a serious conversation took place. "Joe, why am I the last to know that you're getting married?" Henry immediately began with a high note, so Joe answered him in the same spirit. "And I did not know that I am obliged to report to you about their personal affairs. And I'm very curious as to where that information came from. Are you following me? I'm a father and I care about my only son. Even if I put you under surveillance, I have every right to do so. Even so, Dad, I respect you a lot, but in this situation, you're wrong. I'm not a boy anymore. I can take charge of my own life, and I suggest you don't listen to the gossip mongers. Yes, I'm seeing the girl, but it's a little too soon to tell you." Henry was a little relieved by this assurance, but just in case, he decided to take the girl his son was interested in out of the game. The businessman personally met with Alona, and in this he was helped by Harry. The girl to attract a lot of broken, but receiving an envelope solid reward accordingly nodded her head. "Good, I promise that I will not be in the capital tomorrow." Alona kept her word, but still before leaving she called Joe and told him that her mother was seriously ill. This girl never appeared in his life again. Joe did not grieve for long over Alona's sudden disappearance. He did not think about the reasons for her departure, because his main goal in life was sports. To achieve something, it was necessary to keep in good shape, and it was impossible without intensive training. Henry practically did not see his son and missed him very much. The only entertainment of the businessman was work. Once at the presentation of a new line of products of the company approached him. Their companies were competing, so Henry was immediately wary, anticipating a catch. But Matthew was very friendly. "Good for you, Henry. I've been keeping a close eye on your company's affairs. You realize that market conditions make a lot of difference today." The businessman didn't understand where Matthew, about whom many people spoke unflatteringly, wanted to take him. But the rules of etiquette had to be observed, and the man had to support his interlocutor. "I agree with you completely, Matthew. But as far as I know, your business is also on the rise." "No, that's an exaggeration. It's so hard to get things done. You have to adjust to the partners." "I don't like that. We'd all depend on circumstances and other people, but sometimes we can turn things around. It's a pity we don't always take that chance. Prejudices get in the way, or other circumstances." "Yes, modern business is a sea in which those who cannot swim quickly drown." Matthew's face brightened. He realized that his symbol-filled speech had achieved its purpose. Henry had figured out the old fox from the second move, but he had purposely shown incomprehension so that he would reveal himself even more. Matthew took 2 glasses of champagne from the tray. "I propose we drink to the professionals. I must admit that I am always pleased to see a worthy opponent, and at times like this, for some reason, I want to turn the chessboard over. Do you wish to start the game anew or something else?" "Other. I'm always in favor of useful alliances. I think, Henry, we have a lot to discuss. Of course, if you don't mind." "I don't mind, Matthew, but you realize that players on the same team have to keep their cards open for their partner." "I see your point. I guarantee you honesty on my part. Oh, by the way, I've been meaning to ask you, how's your son? His portrait's been in the headlines. I hear he's in the Legionnaires now." "Yeah, he's got a 2-year contract with the Wines, but Joe's been approached by other clubs, but the Finns offered more. I don't know the details, but that must have been the case. You see, dear Henry, business has penetrated even into sports, but I think it's fair when a man wants to convert his achievements into money. After all, athletes sacrifice the most important things: health, personal life, and many other benefits. Believe me, I know this kitchen well because I have been in it with my son for 6 years. Although I have a daughter, but also does not let me and my wife relax. The girl is spoiled beyond belief and so hard-headed that nothing can move her." The topic of children immediately brought the 2 businessmen together, and soon they began to think about a plan to merge the 2 companies into one whole. The final stage of the deal took place just before Christmas, and the partners decided to celebrate the event together. Joe was greatly surprised when father said they would be spending Christmas at Matthew's. "Pa, but I had very different plans, and I think it's no longer proper at my age to walk hand in hand with my father." "Joe, you've been so obnoxious lately. I'm just asking you." "Well, if it's that important to you, I'll put up with it for a while. I was gonna spend the holiday with the boys though. We haven't seen each other in ages, and this is the chance. You'll get to see your friends and girlfriends. Oh, by the way, Harry works for me. I know. He's a very promising young man. Good for him. The mention of an ex-friend spoiled Joe's mood immediately. Many times he caught himself thinking that a former friend was interfering in his life, willingly or unwillingly. Matthew's house had made a strong impression on Joe, though he himself was accustomed to a penniless life. But he, his father's newly minted companion, was a clear fan of luxurious living. The glitz and glitter soon made the young man's eyes water. But that was the beginning of the ordeal. When he saw May, Matthew's daughter, completely lost in space, unlike her mother, who shone like a Christmas tree, the girl was dressed modestly, but it was a very expensive simplicity. It was no surprise to May that her appearance made such a strong impression on Joe. She was used to being the center of attention and immediately set about winning another man's heart. I've wanted to meet you for a long time. Unfortunately, there are no real champions in my circle of friends. The guy responded to the compliments. Among my acquaintances, too, there is no such a beautiful girl. You look so much like a stranger from the painting of a famous artist. Krama. Oh, you're interested in painting? Not really. It's just that a lot of people have told me you look like the young lady who once was the painter. Of course, I'm fine and all, but it's nice to be like famous people. I think it's much nicer to do something yourself that makes you be remembered. It's easy for you to talk, and you get written about and talked about, and I'm just an ordinary girl, and I don't have any special talents. Do you dream of fame? Who doesn't? You know, popularity is rather burdensome than useful once in sight. Any move you make can be misinterpreted, but the sad thing is that fame is a fleeting thing. It is like jilding, it comes off, and the one who was the variola of that fame is then left in oblivion. May looked at Joe with wide open eyes. You surprise me. I always thought sport was brute force. The young man laughed. That is universally mistaken, but even in extremely forceful disciplines, you have to include brains, not to mention hockey. Joe passionately told May about the strategy of the game. She listened to him with bated breath. The parents watched the young people with fascination, and Matthew even wept a little. What a beautiful couple, and they immediately found mutual understanding. I don't recognize my daughter, he said with so much sincerity that Henry believed him. He didn't know that Matthew had made preparations with his daughter the night before. May had at first resented the very fact that she must sacrifice her freedom for her father's affairs. But when the stern parent threatened her with forfeiture of her allowance, the girl gave in. And when she saw Joe, she became indescribably delighted. May whispered in her father's ear, "Daddy, thank you. That hockey player is a real sweetheart. He's a man and you're talking about him as a woman. It doesn't make any difference. For your information, honey, this guy is not only good looking, he's expensive. He's got the best clubs in the world fighting over him." May realized she had to fight for her happiness, but the girl did not have to fight off hundreds of fans, because Joe himself gave up. For 2 weeks of daily meetings, they managed to get so close that he did not want to part. May looked at the boy with loving eyes and whispered, "Only now do I realize what true love is. Joe, we were made for each other. I knew it right away too, the moment I first saw you. But I've got another training camp and a big game coming up. I'd love to cancel, but I can't cancel my contract." "Are you gonna get punished?" Joe jokingly rolled his eyes. "You have no idea what that would mean for me. I'd have to pay a huge penalty. And if a person gets sick, for example, a serious injury. In hockey, you have these sticks, pucks. Everything is very tough. Even illness is not a mitigating circumstance. Of course, here at home, the conditions are milder, but the life of a legionnaire is not so favorable. Then I don't understand why you agreed to play for a foreign club. It's regrettable to admit it, but for a sportsman, it's not so much money as prestige that matters. Although money is also a weighty argument, but still the opportunity to play for a famous team is a real treat, so we try not to pay attention to injuries. Have you often had such cases?" "I can't say that it happened often. Back when I was in juniors, I seriously hurt my knee, but just little things. Bruises when falling or one of my teammates inadvertently hit me with a stick. I didn't realize it was so dangerous. Big sport is not for the faint of heart, and you were right to point out that it's not safe. Joe was touched that May was interested in his affairs and genuinely worried about him. He realized that he wished she was always there for him. The parents of the lovers were delighted with their decision to become one family. The wedding was noisy and crowded, and the rich ceremony was written in secular publications. Disappointed fans desperately envied the chosen one of the famous athlete. But the honeymoon flew by, and it turned out that both were not ready for family life. Or rather, each had his own idea of it. Accustomed to a luxurious life, May began to express dissatisfaction on any occasion. She didn't like the fact that her husband was always at the training camp, but at the same time her comfortable existence required a lot of money. For this reason, Joe was forced to sign a new contract at the end of one. But he was also not satisfied with the idle life of the young spouse. He began to get rumors that May during his absence entertained to the fullest. The situation heated up and once resulted in a loud scandal. Joe was the first to express his displeasure. "May, you and I have been married for 3 years. It's time to think about a child." The young woman weighed as if she was stung by a snake. "To have children, you must first provide for their future." "May, for God's sake, isn't it enough that I earn enough?" The woman laughed hysterically. "Can't these miserable crumbs you bring in be enough? It seems to me you could earn a lot more if it weren't for your modesty." "What do you mean?" "It's simple. You need to raise the stakes and you're willing to sweat for someone else's team for cents." "May, you amaze me. If my salary looks like a dime to you, then how much do you think is appropriate? Aren't your demands a little too high? Maybe it's time to temper your appetite a little. It's not like I'm gonna be running around with a stick forever. I'll soon be 30 and will have to give up big sports." The woman's outraged. She's running around the room. "And you're talking about kids. If we have a family, that goes without saying. Of course, I'll go to a coaching job and will live like everyone else. I don't want to live like everyone else, and I'm not going to breed poverty either." The outburst of emotions was so strong that May could not stand it and cried like a schoolgirl. Joe did not soothe his wife, as he had done before. He left home and spent the whole day at the sports school where his start, big sport, had once taken place. The coach rejoiced at the visit of his former pupil. They talked for a long time about sports and just about life. Then Joe offered the coach to give him a ride home. He agreed. Almost all the way the old coach was silent and only at his home sadly remarked, "I was very happy to meet you. Thank you for not forgetting me, but I don't like it. Joe, the way you look very tired, like a lemon that's been put through a juicer. Go away before it's too late. You can't go out on the ice like that." Joe himself felt he wasn't in the best shape, but he couldn't leave because of his contract for 2 more years. "I thought I'd be fine. Everything would work out, and then I'd give up on my career. But fate ordered otherwise." No sooner had Joe joined the new team than he had health problems. First, his hands began to tremble, then added weakness in his legs. The man wrote it all off to fatigue and did not say anything to the team doctor. But when the picture in front of his eyes began to blur, he realized that it was serious. For some time, he managed to hide his poor health, but at one important match against the background of excitement, all the symptoms worsened, and Joe could not play at full strength. After the match, he had to listen to a lot of hurtful words in his address, and the captain warned in broken language, "One more stunt like that and you're out of the team." Joe tried to explain to him that he wasn't exactly feeling well. "I don't care about your problems. You've been paid big money for it." Joe sought help from the medic who monitored the player's health. The man examined him for a long time, shaking his head. "Bad. Your business, Joe. You should be yelling guard." "Why?" "I can't, as you say, see what's wrong. But if you don't get treatment right now, it's gonna end very badly. That's why I came to you, Doc. You give me some pills, I'll take them. I can't quit now." The medic, understanding again, nodded baldness, covered with a narrow, colorful cap. "I understand. Forfeit." "That's right, Doc. You know how much the owner will screw me." The doctor rummaged in his safe for a long time, then pulled out a jar of pills. "Here you go, Joe, but no more than 1 pill a day." I got it. The pills helped a lot at first. Joe felt a surge of energy and was quite aggressive on the field. But the boost didn't last long, so he decided to double the dosage himself. But it didn't help. Once during a match, his legs refused to obey Joe. He collapsed on the ice and could not get up. Only a few days he was kept in the hospital, but since the treatment was paid, he had to continue it at home. Henry was shocked when he found out what had happened to his son. Joe was treated in one of the best clinics in the capital, and after just a few days he learned that he had multiple sclerosis. The attending physician spoke of the dreaded disease as if it were something ordinary. "I'm sorry, my friend, but you can forget about sports forever. The most important thing now is to preserve your quality of life." This was the first time Joe had heard this term, so he asked the doctor to explain more. He fixed his glasses on the bridge of his nose and patiently explained, "I do not want to scare you, but the results of the examination showed that the pathological process has long been started in your body. Perhaps the cause was an injury, which is often the case with athletes, or diseases passed on to you by inheritance. That's out of the question. Everyone in our family is strong. My father hardened me from childhood and taught me to play sports. That's good, of course, but no one is immune to illness. We, doctors, also get sick, again, to my great regret. But not everything is as hopeless as it may seem at first glance. People with such a diagnosis as yours live full lives. But your case is a bit unusual, so the prognosis is not so comforting." "Doctor, I don't understand you. One minute you're saying I'm almost healthy, the next you're predicting the next." "Joe, you take it easy. We'll be watching you. It's the most ungrateful thing you can do." Joe spent almost a month in the clinic, but his improvement was short-lived. He had to move in with his father because May was horrified when she saw him in his helpless state. "God, what's all this on my poor head? No kids, Joe. When you need help yourself." "Thank you, wife, for your support. I wouldn't expect anything else from you." "Of course, and don't you dare judge me, because I warned you right away that I don't want to do anything. I don't need anything from you anymore. It's just a shame I didn't see you for the carefree insect you are. I thought you were human. Now you're insulting me in my house." "Don't worry, May. I won't be here anymore." Joe moved in with his father, and soon the news came that he was being sued. The reason for the lawsuit was failure to fulfill the terms of the contract. The amount of compensation was several times the fee he had received, but Henry paid it all in full. "I don't want to see you dragged through the courts like this." "Thanks, Dad. I gotta get out of this trap." "You have to. There's no other way. And you can always count on my help." Joe began to get used to his new surroundings, but it was May who spoiled it. Just before Christmas, she showed up at the country estate to give her husband another scandal. Henry was away at the time, but Sarah witnessed an unpleasant scene. May attacked Joe from the doorstep, regardless of his condition. "You've made yourself comfortable. Nice house, servants, and a wheelchair to top off the scenery. An oil painting." Joe tried to keep his cool. "Do you find my helplessness funny?" "But come on, how could I? I'm supposed to cry and wail." "May, tell me straight out why you came here. You still have the nerve to ask that. You left me destitute." "All right, well, you don't have to go on. You need money." "That's right. I'm sorry, but I can't help you with that. As you can see, I'm in a bad place myself. You should think about getting a job or let your dad support you. It's not up to you." May had mustered the strength to make one last complaint. "Joe, you can still get me back, but you need money to do that, don't you?" The woman nodded in agreement, not suspecting a trick in the question. Joe wheeled his wheelchair closer to her, and she fearfully started to back away. "May, I have a counter-proposal for you. You can have me back too. If you agree to move into this house for a while to help your father a little, with nowhere else to go." The woman hit the wall. "You're just offering me to be your nurse? But you're my wife. You're not a stranger." "Oh no, I can't. I'm not ready for that." Sarah saw May storm out of Joe's room as she ran past her, and she couldn't help it. "Bitch," an absorbent cotton doll. May turned around. "Are you talking to me?" "You, who else?" May screamed hysterically. "Freak house. How did I not realize it in the first place?" Sarah threw open the front doors. "Come on, madam, get out of here. And I don't recommend you come here again." Cursing her life and the people in the house, May got into the car and sped toward the gate. Contrary to the doctor's positive assertions, Joe's condition was rapidly deteriorating. Weakened body and stress played a cruel joke on the athlete. He picked up a cold. For 3 days, the guy burned in fever. and the doctor who arrived on a call with his hands folded. "I'm sorry to tell you, but things are bad. In addition to the underlying illness, he had a cold." Where could he have gotten it? Joe himself answered the doctor's question. "A couple days ago, some friends came to visit me." "Yeah, and spring is flu season, so what's the point of sitting around like a hermit in the first place? If you want to keep what health you have left, you have to make sacrifices." "Doctor, my life these past few months has been all about sacrifice. Tell me, what's the point of living at all?" The doctor didn't answer the question and quickly left. Henry volunteered to accompany him. "Doctor, I'm desperate. I need your advice on what to do. The best doctors have seen my son and the professor, but everything is at the same point." The district doctor squinted his eyes. "You know, I'm not a professor, but I will say that everything depends on the desire of the patient. Your son himself does not want or is not in the mood for recovery. So what do? You have to motivate him. He's an athlete. That's the kind of person who's driven to succeed, and our patient needs to be motivated to do the same. But it's up to you how you do it. In my experience, even a little success can work wonders. Push him. Do not give him free minutes, that is, deprive the guy of any opportunity to plunge into his dull thoughts. If I were you, I'd hire a nurse, preferably a young and pretty girl." Henry was surprised. Does age and sex matter? It does. After all, a young man, even a sick one, would not want to show his weakness to a lady. I may be wrong, but this is all based on my personal observations. All day, Henry pondered over the doctor's strange recommendation, and in the evening he invited Sarah into his office. "I'm not at all comfortable giving you such an assignment. I'm very afraid of being misunderstood." "Henry, don't bother. I heard everything last night." The doctor was talking very loudly, so it was impossible not to hear him. "What do you say? About his suggestion or about the nurse?" "Both. Of course, I don't know much about medicine, but I think our doctor's advice should be heeded. At the very least, it's worth a shot. I think I have a candidate in mind." Henry's revitalized. "That's a good place to start. Don't get too excited. You may not be happy with this girl. All right, I don't want to beat around the bush. My niece Kate, a nurse by training, worked at the clinic for 4 years after college, but something happened there. I don't know exactly. In short, the girl was forbidden to practice her profession, but she can be a nurse and she's proud. She didn't take kindly to her employer." "And where does she work now?" "Up nowhere. She's a paper courier, and I have to do all the work." Sarah was ready to tell the owner about her hard life with all the details, but he impatiently interrupted the woman. "Let your niece come tomorrow. In principle, I have no choice. If the girl has worked, then she has some experience. Yeah, she gives me massages and knows what pills to pop when my blood pressure spikes." "Okay, we have a deal." "Of course, I can't say no to you, Henry. You're like family to me, and I'm so worried about Joe. I mean, I watched him grow up." Sarah lived on the other side of the village and had to walk a decent distance every day. But on this night, she was racing home. Her heart was filled with a double joy. First, she had a chance to get a job for her niece, who had been in her care almost since she was a baby. And second, she could finally arrange her personal life. This energetic woman had a man in mind who was paying attention to her. But the beau did not have his own place, so they had to meet secretly. Sarah bustled into the house, barely able to catch her breath. Kate. The niece had never seen her aunt in such a state and was frightened. "Aunt Sarah, what's the matter with you? Is something wrong?" "It happened, Kate. I found a job for you with money." The girl's face blushed. "Are you kidding me?" "I'm not kidding. True, you may not be satisfied with such a position, but on the fish list, as they say, do not choose." The girl began to shake the aunt. "What are you all talking in riddles?" On purpose decided to help me. "Let me catch my breath, then I'll tell you everything. I already got dinner ready. I just got my paycheck today." "And how much?" The girl doomed squeezed out, $3,000. "Yes, poorly paid for your services, but nothing. Soon you'll be like a cheese and butter." Sarah expected her niece to dance with joy, but Kate, on the contrary, became sad. Her aunt even took offense to that reaction. "I rode like a dragon horse across the village to cheer you up, and you didn't even smile. Of course, it's a shame for you to be a nurse." "Auntie, what are you talking about? A nurse only has a white coat. and sometimes you have to do such work that a normal person would shudder. I was upset for another reason. What if your Henry calls the clinic and finds out about me? Let him call, although I don't think he will, because my businessman is a very decent man. And why are you so afraid? You still haven't told me what you've done to upset your boss. You could at least tell me now so I know. I'm not comfortable telling you about these things. Sarah drew the girl to her and stroked her flaxen hair like a little girl. You silly girl. I'm your mother, so I'm allowed to tell you everything. The girl stretched and her eyes glistened. Everything was fine until this patient showed up in our ward. His last name is Stark. Wait, isn't that the Stark? It is, Aunt Sarah. But he was still in his position at the time. They took him off after he got drunk and drove. He was on TV, the creep. He came to us with a heart attack and he had his eye on me. What a bastard. I had a hankering for strawberries. He's already 50 years old. 47 according to his passport. Anyway, he began to me first all sorts of compliments obscene to make and then did not give a pass. I had to ask the girls when I had to go to his room. After all, he was treated in a single room. And what happened next? If I ever found out he hurt you, I'll do it with my own hands. Kate smiled through her tears. I may look frail, but I could stand up for myself. Anyway, this Stark guy started complaining to the chief about me for being rude to patients. Our head of the department did a preventive work with me, and I promised that it will not happen again. And then I was on night duty and the bastard pretended to be sick. And he chose the right moment when I was alone at the post, and as it should be in such situations with a resuscitation kit, flew into the room and he put me on the bed. I'm still disgusted. Sarah froze. Now I understand why you didn't say anything. Auntie, at least listen to the end. I had the tray in my hands, so I hit him right in the face with my knee in the most vulnerable place. Good for you. That's what you think? Stark howled, bent over, and blood gushed from his nose, broken by the tray. Of course, everyone came running, but no one would listen to me. They believed the goat that I deliberately attacked him. But do you get a wolf ticket for that? Of course, there is such an article, incompatibility with the position held. But the head decided not to bring the case to court and offered me to resign of my own accord. True, I still spoiled my work record book. Why didn't you tell me this before? I would have told you about Stark. I was just embarrassed, the woman cried. And tell me, where is the justice in having the conscience to hurt an orphan? Sarah was impressed by her niece's story. She cried for a long time, remembering how she raised one niece. They sister orphaned when the younger girl was only 7 years old. Sarah was 12 years older than the little girl. For the sake of her little sister, she had to quit her studies and give up her personal life. But that instead of gratitude brought her only grief and shame. Sarah could not keep track of her sister, and she fell into a bad company. The girl began to come home in the morning and she smelled of booze. Sarah tried to talk some sense into the girl. She cried, promised to improve, but it all happened again. And then she announced she was having a baby. Noticing how her sister's face changed, the future mother calmed her down. Don't worry, sister. I'll give up the baby right away. Why would I do that? I'll go to the city and get a job there. This revelation shocked the woman. How dare you say that? People are suffering for years, cannot give birth to a child, and you have already planned in advance to abandon his own blood. And it was especially hurtful to hear such reasoning, because for the sake of her sister's future, she gave up her happiness as a woman. But she was not up to her older sister's worries. She barely waited for the birth, and then immediately went into all the hard work. Kate was only 5 months old when the men in uniform came to the house. You need to come with us for a lineup. Sarah felt a chill go through her. What happened? You were told to come to the lineup. Your sister may be dead. Sarah recognized her sister immediately by the flower tattoo on her arm. She remembers the coroner offering her condolences and then saying regretfully, she should have lived on, so young and beautiful. And it was all the damn booz's fault. The woman was afraid to look at her sister's lifeless body and only asked, did she poison herself? If only. Can't you see she's all messed up? They must have gotten drunk, and there was a conflict with all the tragic consequences. Kate's been in her aunt's care ever since, but Sarah never told the girl under what circumstances her mother died. She did not want to traumatize the child's soul. The aunt generally tried to keep her niece out of trouble, and until sometime I succeeded. Kate grew up an obedient girl and pleased her aunt's success in school. It was on her advice that she entered medical school. This profession, Kate, is tailor-made for you. You're pathetic. Nurses don't do anything special. They flit around the wards in their white coats, giving shots in the soft spot. Only later, during the internship, Kate realized how wrong her aunt was, but she is not accustomed to retreat in the face of difficulties, and soon she loved her job with all her soul. In the morning, Henry waited for his housekeeper on the first floor. He noticed from afar that Sarah was accompanied by a fragile girl. She's just a child. What kind of nurse would she be? But the businessman's disappointment was quickly replaced by admiration. Kate politely said hello and leisurely took off her light coat. The landlord suggested, "Let me take you to our sick man." "Okay, but I have to wash my hands first." Sick people who have to stay within 4 walls are very weak, so they can easily catch an infection. Joe wasn't expecting visitors in the morning, so he was reading the first book he could find in bed. When Kate carefully opened the door, he thought he was dreaming because the novel described a similar scene. He stared into the girl's face, and she blushed with embarrassment. "Hello, Joe." "Hello. Are you a fairy or a star that got lost in the sky?" "No, son, this is your assistant, and her name is..." Joe didn't immediately notice his father and Sarah because all his attention was on the pretty stranger. To his father's remarks, he jokingly objected. "Dad, wait. I have to guess the name of this nymph who jumped off the pages of the book I'm reading myself." Henry wanted to interrupt his son, but Sarah gave him such an expressive look that he stopped talking. Joe glanced at the open page, then back at the girl. In my story, Kate came to the hero. He waited for her, and she came. The girl smiled. "My name is Kate, too." The witnesses to this touching scene looked at each other and decided they had better remove themselves. Henry whispered, "There's something magical about that girl. I didn't expect her to win me over with one look, and I haven't seen Joe in such high spirits in a long time. Maybe the doctor's right." "It's too early to tell. We'll see." The young men studied each other in silence for a long time. Joe was the first to break this long pause. "Perhaps we should get to know each other better. A star named Kate." The girl laughed. "Why do you call me that?" "If you don't mind, I won't." "I don't mind. But you know, appearances can be very deceiving." "So you're saying that underneath the blonde nymph is a monster?" "No, I don't want to scare you, but I'm definitely not Cinderella. Let's say I'm not a prince either. But what made you come all the way out here to visit a secluded hermit?" "I wasn't forced to, and it wasn't a long journey. I came here to help you." "Well, you've ruined the whole fairy tale, but I'm still willing to obey you, if only for today." This is already good, because sometimes one day means much more than a whole year. Joe and his father were soon convinced of the justice of this remark. All day long, Kate spent her days by Joe's side. She gave him massages, then made him do special exercises. Daily walks were also part of the recovery package. But Kate had a lot of questions when she saw what her ward ate. But it was Sarah who took all the lumps. "Auntie, you do realize that so much meat on one plate is a crime." Joe needed protein when he played sports, but now he needs something lighter. "So don't yell at the lady. Just tell her what she needs. All I've been hearing from you lately is complaints. But what can I do? I created my own problem." Henry was the only one who stayed out of it, but he could see by the revitalized look in his son's eyes that Kate had made him want to live. He came home one evening and couldn't believe his eyes. Joe, leaning lightly on his cane, was strolling down the path that ran along the flower bed. "Pa, you may congratulate me, but I think it's to your credit that it was your idea to bring this wonderful girl into our home." "You're wrong. It was your doctor who suggested it, and I had no other choice." "But I don't think you have any regrets." "You're right. I can't believe it wasn't so long ago that I didn't really want to live. Kate promised to show me to some doctor she knows. She says he's really good at this kind of thing." "Now do you believe you can get it all back?" "I do, Dad, and thank you for your patience." Whether it was faith or Kate's effect on Joe, his condition improved every day. They had many conversations with Kate, mostly about what had gone before. Joe felt that he would never tell a single person in his life what he was telling this fragile girl. Kate felt needed another push, something else that would put a stop to the moping and get him moving forward. Kate was sure that all it took was the will. "Henry, can I talk to you?" "Sure, Nadia. Is something wrong?" He took a break from his papers. Lately, he had been doing nothing but trying to fix his firm's affairs after he had paid a huge penalty for his son, and then spent an equally huge sum on his treatment. The firm had sagged, or rather its affairs had sagged. He didn't say anything to Joe and tried not to let anyone else around him notice either. "No, nothing's happened. I'd like to ask you a favor. I need 2 days off. I'll go into town. My girlfriend invited me to a wedding and I'll be right back." Kate was a terrible liar. Henry realized at once that the reason was something else, but he had no right to ask her, much less to distrust her. "All right, Kate, we'll manage. Don't worry." Kate knew where she was going, and she wasn't sure she'd find the man she needed, but she decided to give it a try. Strangely enough, she found the building right away. A few questions to passersby, a little wit, and there she was at the door. She didn't know how to pray, but she whispered, "Lord, let this coach be found." Yes, Kate had traveled to another city to find the very coach Joe respected so much, and he also spoke very warmly of the first trainer, but only this one could help. She spent a long time explaining to the guard exactly who she needed. When he finally understood, he smiled. "That's what they would have said." Kate was surprised. "That's what I said." "No, that's not what you said." The girl was led down some corridors for a long time. Finally, a door opened and a cold smell came over her. "On that bench over there, see?" "Yeah, thank you very much." Coach was surprised. Seeing a frail girl where only men practice was a little unusual. "Are you sure it's for me? If you're the man who trained Joe." "So I heard he retired from the sport, but he broke his contract." "Yeah, he got sick, got real sick, so he broke it." "Come on, girl. Let's go to my office. You can tell me all about it." Kate came back excited. The coach promised to find out something and then be sure to come back. Joe sat in the chair. He walked outside today even without a stick. It was, of course, a little scary. He'd gotten used to it lately, but he wanted to please Kate. His father hadn't been seen all day, though today was a day off and he wasn't going to work. Strangely enough, Sarah hadn't shown up either. Joe got up, decided to go look for them. He found Sarah cooking something in the kitchen, father sitting on the sofa. It was ridiculous, unusual, and Joe couldn't think of anything better to say. "Why are you here?" Joe noticed that his father and Sarah herself looked embarrassed. He looked at his father in surprise, then looked at their housekeeper, and suddenly realized that he had never thought of Sarah as a woman. But she had been. She was already over 40. Who could be older? But she was a very interesting woman, slim, though large brown eyes. Joe hurried out of the kitchen, and Henry thought, "This is all very confusing. Before Kate came along, I had no idea that Sarah was not only kind and smart, but also beautiful." He couldn't explain what Kate had to do with it, but it didn't matter. 3 days after Kate's return, something happened that Joe never dreamed would happen. They had just sat down to tea in the courtyard when the guard came in. "Joe, there's someone here to see you." "Me? Who?" He said it was just Sam. "Coach." Joe looked at Kate, but she was talking to her aunt. So he got up and walked to the gate. "But hello, Joe. I see you're holding up well." He wasn't alone. There was another coach with him. "Where are you from?" "I'm so glad to see you. But will you invite me in?" Of course, come in." They drank tea for a long time, talked about nothing, admired the cakes and flowers. Then they'd all left, leaving Joe with the trainers. "So, Joe, how's it going?" "Well, I'd had worse." "It's good that you're positive, very good. I got a proposition for you." Sam explained that such a high-level hockey player could do a lot more good coaching kids, maybe even adults. But first, he needs to get a feel for the ice again. That's what the coach will help him with. In the meantime, Sam would do some sort of publicity. Joe sat there and couldn't believe his ears. As they were saying goodbye, Joe asked, "Where are you from? How did you even come up with the idea to come here?" "I didn't tell anyone about my illness." Sasha grinned. "Take care of your Kate. She's great." Joe smiled. Yes, that's his Kate. And now he finally realized it. All night he thought about how he would tell Kate. Then he decided to take his time. He would get up a little, start earning money, and then he would propose to her. 2 months later, they first saw a sports ad about Joe coming back to teach new champions. And the next day, as he and Kate were going for a walk, the door swung open and May appeared on the doorstep. "Joe, darling, I've missed you so much." Joe was confused, and before he could push her away, she wrapped her arms around him and kissed him. Kate immediately pulled back and then left the room altogether. Finally, the young man pushed May away. "What do you want? Why did you come here?" "Come on, we all make mistakes. I told you, I'm not a nurse, I'm a wife. You're quite independent now, you'll start earning soon. I think we can be together again. Are you happy? I can see that." She sat down on the sofa, throwing her leg over the leg in a spectacular fashion, and Joe stared at her in amazement. "May, what about Harry? He turned out to be a bastard, offered me a job. Can you imagine that?" "No, I can't even imagine that. Don't sit around. You've got to ride into town." May narrowed her eyes. "What, are you kicking me out or something?" "Exactly, and I wish I'd never seen you again in my life." May realized that her hopes that Joe would cry with joy were not justified. She tried another way. Tears quickly dripped from her eyes. "Joe, honey, all people make mistakes. I'm no exception. I can't be without you, do you understand?" Joe laughed. "I've forgotten what an actress you are. Go away, May, and stay out of my life." The woman jumped up just as Henry entered the room. "You're going to regret this. You're going to regret it. Go home. Daddy's gonna beat your daddy to a pulp. Do you understand?" She grabbed her suitcase and walked proudly past Henry. As soon as the door slammed, he turned to the son. "Joe, what was that?" "I'm afraid, Dad, there's another problem." Joe was right. 3 days later, Matthew informed Henry that he wanted to split the company. "Herman, but you realize it's death to me now, don't you?" "Of course I realize that, Henry. That's why I'm doing this. I'm going to become the sole entrepreneur in this business and fulfill my daughter's request." "What does that have to do with the kids? Besides, you know it was Meg who left Joe when he got sick." "Yeah, you're right. Young women make mistakes, but you have to forgive them. You know what, Matthew? Why don't you and your family all go?" Matthew glared, but Henry was already out. They sat in the yard under the old apple tree together, Joe, Kate, Sarah, and Matthew. There were papers in front of Henry. "Well, Pa, maybe I should try to borrow some money." "No, Joe, let's be logical. You haven't even started work yet. Nobody knows how it's gonna go. Besides, to borrow that kind of money, you'd have to rob a bank." "Is it that bad?" "Well, it's a bust. If we sell this house, the apartment in the city, and the leftovers, whatever Matthew leaves us after he's withdrawn his assets, we have a chance of coming out at zero." Joe whistled. Sarah said out of habit, "Don't bring it down. There won't be any money." Everyone turned to her. The woman realized she'd done something stupid and stood up. "I'll make tea." She was about to leave when a beautiful woman came to the table. They'd been living without a day guard for a few days now. "Hello." Henry looked up and held out his eyes. "Callie." Joe stared at his mother without looking away. He thought he'd never recognize her in his life, but no, he did. "Hello, Henry. Hello, son." Joe didn't say a word, but Henry stood up, pushed back his chair. "Well, sit down now that you're here. What's the matter? Or did you decide to ruin our lives too, to finish us off, so to speak?" The woman looked at her ex-husband in surprise. "Henry, what's the matter with you? You never gave up." She was silent for a few minutes, as if gathering her thoughts. "I was in the country on business for a while. I met a mutual friend. We sat and talked. I didn't know anything about Joe or what you guys were going through. But I'm not surprised." Joe turned away. "Joe, yes, listen to me, please. I understand who you think I am, but I don't think it would have been better for me to stay. My soul would still be there, and I'd hate you because you wouldn't let me realize my dream. But that's not what I mean. My acquaintance told me everything. Everything, as I understand it right now, the most important thing for you is to save the firm." Henry nodded his head. "Yes, but I don't think we can do that." "Yes, we can. Yes, we can. My husband died, leaving me a very wealthy widow. Besides, I've done some good things for that country myself, and I'm paid very well there. Now, as the hours wore on, I realized that I was terribly lonely. I know exactly how Joe feels about me, and I wouldn't go to you. I want to help. I realize your pride won't allow you to accept money from me. Henry, could this be considered alimony for Joe's entire life? I just don't know how to talk very nice. I haven't been able to give my son the love and care he needs. Let me do at least that. I'm not buying your forgiveness. I'm used to it. Let it be something. She put the envelope down, stood up, and headed for the exit. Joe didn't make it first. Mom, she stopped, turned around. Stay at least a couple days. Maybe we can make it work. Henry was proud of Joe now, and so was Kate. That evening, Callie, walking through the garden, heard sobs. She carefully pushed back the bushes and saw Sarah, who was crying quietly in a corner of the garden. The woman smiled and stepped towards her. Sarah jumped up fearfully. Please don't go. Please sit down. Sarah obediently sat down. I know why you're crying because of Henry, because of the fact that I'm here. Sarah shook her head negatively at first, then waved her hand and spoke. You know, we've been around each other for so many years and we've never looked at each other as like a man and a woman. Yeah, that's right. And now I don't know what's going on. I've driven away the man I was going to marry. I've lost my mind. No, you haven't. And Henry loves you too. I saw the way he looked at you. You think so? But why are you telling me this? Kelly smiled. I guess because I don't love, and never have, the way I love my second husband. Don't think anything of it. That's not why I came here. May was circling her father's desk. Dad, it's gonna be another 20 minutes. You know things don't happen overnight. You see, his company's stock is down 1 point. 1 point? But why so little? You said they'd crash and you take the firm for nothing. I did, but I don't know what's going on. He shouldn't have any money. No bank will give him a loan. I've made sure of that. May plopped down on the couch and turned on the TV. Matthew also raised his head and stared at the screen with amazed eyes. The beautiful young newscaster was talking about big changes, expansions at Henry's company. Say, Henry here, the man seems to have it all. He's achieved everything. But why do you suddenly decide to move on? It's very simple. You know, I realized at any age, you can start over. My son made a turn. Now he's a coach. He's getting married soon, and soon there will be a new addition to the family. Here's me. I also have weddings coming up and a new family member, a grandson or granddaughter. So why should the business stand still? We will grow and grow as our big friendly family. May jumped up. I hate it. I hate it. Her father was tensely looking at the computer. What is it? Money jumped up to him. What is it? Our stock is going down and someone's buying it up real fast. And I think I know who. That bastard. He's outplayed me again. Matthew slammed the laptop lid down hard. He slammed it down so hard that it cracked. May looked at him fearfully. What are you looking at? Go get a job. We'll be walking around the world with our hands out. May cried, and Matthew swore again. There was only one thing Joe had left to do before the wedding. They stopped outside the hospital where Kate was interning. Why are we here? We have to. They entered the hospital and Joe literally dragged her along. Finally finding the right door, he pushed it open. A man with a bald head and a long nose stepped up to meet them. Joe looked at Kate. Him? She nodded, and Joe took great pleasure in punching him in the nose. That's it now.